Chapter 2. It starts with letting go. The first thing Jesus says after he sits down is this: "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." A lot of people hear that and immediately get confused. What does that even mean? Does it mean being weak? Does it mean having low self-esteem? Does it mean thinking badly about yourself? No, it means something much deeper and much simpler. It means you have stopped living like you are your own source. That is where life begins to open again. Most people do not realize how exhausting it is to live as if everything depends on them. You have to hold yourself together. You have to make everything work. You have to protect your image. You have to control the outcome. You have to carry what tomorrow might bring. Even if you never say it out loud, that pressure can live underneath everything. And after a while, it starts to feel normal. But it is not normal. It is heavy because you were never built to live that way. This is why poor in spirit comes first. Before anything can be restored, the illusion of self-sufficiency has to break. Not in a harsh way, not in a humiliating way, in an honest way. You finally see, I cannot be my own source and still be at peace. If you have to hold everything together, you will never be at rest. That recognition is not failure. It is the beginning of freedom. A person who is poor in spirit is not a person who thinks they have no value. It is a person who has stopped pretending they can generate life from themselves. That is very different. This is not self-hatred. This is clarity, and clarity changes everything. Because when you think you are the source, you live under constant pressure. You have to produce enough, know enough, fix enough, control enough, and be enough. But when you begin to see that you were never meant to be the source, something starts to loosen inside you. You stop gripping so hard. You stop building your life around your own strength. You stop needing to be the answer to everything. This is where many people resist, because letting go sounds dangerous. If I stop holding everything so tightly, won't everything fall apart? That is what fear says. But the truth is, a lot of what is falling apart in us is happening because we have been holding things that were never ours to carry in the first place. To be poor in spirit means you are no longer standing before life saying, I've got this. It means you are finally honest enough to say, I was never meant to carry this alone. That is not weakness. That is right order beginning to return. And notice what Jesus says next. For theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Not might be, not could be someday. Theirs is the kingdom. The kingdom is not only a place you go later, it is life under God's rule now. And it only works when you stop trying to be the one in control. Why? Because the kingdom can only be received by someone who no longer insists on being their own ruler. That is the point. If I am determined to be my own source, my own stabilizer, and my own answer, then I am not ready to receive rule from anywhere else. But when that inner posture breaks, when I stop living self-sourced, I become able to receive. That is why this comes first, before mercy, before purity, before peacemaking, before everything else. Because none of those things can live freely in a person who is still deeply committed to being their own foundation. This shows up in everyday life more than people think. Sometimes it looks like anxiety. Sometimes it looks like anger. Sometimes it looks like overworking. Sometimes it looks like always needing to explain yourself. Sometimes it looks like control. On the outside, those things all look different. But underneath them can be the same root. I am living like it all depends on me. That is what begins to break here. Think about how this works in real life. A man comes home tired, carrying the whole day in his body. His mind is still at work. His chest is tight. He is physically in the room, but inwardly he is still holding everything up. He hears his family, but he is not settled. He sits down, but he is not resting. Why? Because his body is home, but his spirit is still trying to be the source, still trying to manage, still trying to carry, still trying to keep everything from falling apart. That is the kind of burden people get used to carrying. And Jesus starts here by showing that you do not enter life under God's rule until you stop living like you are the one holding it together. This is also why some people cannot rest, even when nothing is happening. Silence feels uncomfortable. Stillness feels exposed. Because when there is no noise, they come face to face with how much pressure they are carrying inside. Being poor in spirit is the beginning of laying that pressure down. Not because you have solved everything, but because you have recognized you were never the source to begin with. And this is where the quiet truth from earlier fits even deeper. You do not earn your way back. You do not talk your way back. You do not fix your way back. You recognize your way back. Here, what you recognize is simple. I have been living for myself, and it is too heavy. That recognition does not condemn you. It opens the door. Some people think the beginning of spiritual life is becoming impressive. It is not. It is becoming honest. Honest about your limits. Honest about your need. Honest about the fact that self-sourcing has not produced peace. And once that honesty appears, the kingdom is no longer a distant idea. It becomes something you can receive. This is why blessed belongs here. Because the person who has come to the end of self-sufficiency may not feel strong, but they are finally standing in the right place. And the right place changes everything. Not all at once. Not by pressure. But truly, being poor in spirit means you have stopped calling independence freedom. You have started seeing it for what it often is. Exhaustion, strain, hidden fear, and the endless work of trying to be enough without ever becoming settled. Jesus begins here because life with God does not start with proving yourself. It starts with letting go. And for many people, that is the hardest step. Not because it is complicated, because it requires surrender. It requires you to stop reaching inward for what can only come from the Father. It requires you to stop building from yourself and become willing to receive. But once that happens, everything can begin to change. Because now life is no longer being built on a source that keeps collapsing. What this means in real life. Being poor in spirit can sound big, but it shows up in very ordinary moments. It looks like noticing you are trying to control someone else's response. It looks like realizing you are carrying tomorrow before it arrives. It looks like feeling the urge to prove yourself in a conversation and seeing that urge for what it is. It looks like recognizing that your constant internal strain is not strength. It is misplaced responsibility. And sometimes it looks like a very simple prayer. Father, I have been carrying this like it all depends on me. It does not. I need you to be my source again. That kind of honesty changes a person. Not instantly in every visible way, but at the root. What is actually happening inside. When a person lives self-sourced, their inner world stays tense. They may look composed on the outside, but inwardly they are always managing, always calculating, always anticipating, and always bracing. Why? Because if you believe you are the source, you also believe you must protect that source. You must keep yourself from failing, from looking weak, from losing control. That is why self-sourced living is so tiring. It turns life into constant maintenance. But when a person becomes poor in spirit, the inside begins to soften, not into passivity, into right order. The soul stops trying to sit on a throne it was never meant to occupy. That is where peace begins. Simple reset. Pause here and ask, where am I living like everything depends on me? What am I carrying right now that is too heavy because I was never meant to be the source of it? Where do I keep reaching inward for strength, control, or stability instead of receiving from the Father? Do not rush those questions. Let them uncover what has been hidden. Then answer simply, I am not the source. And that is not bad news. It is the beginning of rest. That is where this life starts. Not with impressing God, not with fixing yourself, with letting go of the lie that you were ever meant to hold everything together. This is where real life begins. Not when you take control, but when you finally let go of it.